Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of Lindsey Byrd in Writing is Hard. This week, we're looking at fantasy saints, iconographers, and building an atmospheric setting of your own unique world. We also talk about beta reading, editing, changing agents in the middle of a publication journey, and so much more. I hope you enjoy. Today's author interview is with Kaylee Reed. Kaylee grew up just outside of Portland, Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest, a place best known for rain and incredible coffee. She moved to Northern Ireland after high school and completed a degree in English literature and history from Queen's University in Belfast. If you're wondering what kind of person gets excited about visiting Britain's National Archives for dissertation research, that would be Kaylee. She currently lives in Belfast with her cat Dorothy and her husband Greg, and she works as a wedding photographer. Her debut novel, which is out November 2025, is entitled The Sacred Space Between, and its back of book blurb reads, Jude is a saint with dangerous magic. Exiled by the Abbey to live out his days in a decaying estate on the moors alone until gifted iconographer Maeve is sent to paint his icon. Suspecting she's a spy for her beloved Abbey, Jude makes it his mission to get rid of Maeve as soon as possible. That is until he discovers that Maeve holds the same tainted magic as he does, and she may be the key to destroying the Abbey's power. But this institution has eyes everywhere, and the only thing the Abbey loves more than a saint is a martyr. So, to start us off, what inspired you to write this story?
I've always been just a massive, massive reader, in all sorts of genres, basically everything under the sun. And I think with a lot of people, like kind of like with COVID and lockdown, you started to get more into reading, discovering new genres, and I started to get really into romantasy and just really loving that mashup between romance and fantasy and kind of just started discovering what I liked in those genres. And those were things like books that were really atmospheric. I always loved really slow burn romance that was really like kind of angsty and filled with like pining and yearning and all of that like tension. So I just started kind of exploring different topics that I could write about. And actually wrote a few other books before this one. This was the first one that like I felt really clicked and kind of came about through wanting to explore like various religious themes in fantasy, kind of pulling a bit from things that was going on in my own life, and also just wanting to write a book that was just like I don't know, I'm always very inspired by like the weather and the atmosphere and kind of like themes around like loneliness and like finding connection with other people, and yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
So, you said that you wrote several books beforehand. Was this the first one that you queried, or were you querying beforehand as well?
So this was the second one I queried, the third one that I wrote. So the first book was a YA fantasy. It was sort of like fairy tale vibes. Like it was a very fun book, and I'm glad that I wrote it, but also am equally glad that I'm not debuting with it. And then the second book was another YA fantasy. It was set in the real world. It had like some like magical guilds, that sort of thing. And I actually ended up taking a lot of that for the book that's coming out after my debut, which I don't think I can talk about technically, but yeah, so I didn't end up querying that one because I got like very seized by the idea for Sacred Space and just started diving into that and quickly forgot about the second book as it just consumed me.
For those who might be unfamiliar, what is an iconographer and what does relationship does an iconographer have with a saint?
So an iconographer, like in, I guess, in a real world setting, especially in like Catholicism, is a painter who paints like I don't know if you've been, in chapels or in churches, and there's these big gilded portraits of holy figures. A lot of the times they're posed in certain ways to like represent different I guess meanings that the artist or whoever's commissioning it wants to portray. But yeah, they're basically like church ordained or church chosen artists to portray holy figures.
Was there any like real world example you saw that like you were like, you know what, I'm really curious about this particular relationship, either from the artist perspective or from the saint perspective? Was there anything that like really inspired you from that point of view?
Yeah. So this is going to be a really bad like I guess, a historical reference because I can't remember where I read it, who wrote the article, anything like that. But basically, an article popped up, might have been on Twitter, I can't remember, but it was about a female iconographer, and there weren't many of them throughout history, kind of the church, very male-dominated space. But this female iconographer, and again, I can't even remember what her name was when she lived. But was just talking a lot about how she had kind of broken into this space and was really well known for her paintings. And it just got me really inspired to kind of think about the relationship between like the artist and the subject, especially in spaces where it might be harder to break into it as an artist, like with a female iconographer. Yeah, so that's kind of a little bit where like I started to pick out the relationship between Maeve, who's the artist, and then Jude, who is her subject, the saint. Especially, in the book, Jude is exiled. He very much is not a believer in this religious organization that Maeve is a part of and that she is like committed her whole entire life to. So he resents his position. He resents her for depicting him in a way that he hates so much. Um, yeah, and I think I've strayed from the original question, but yeah, that's kind of where I started first to pick at the relationship between artist and subject.
Well, what's really interesting is that for I'm trying to remember my very poor Catholic knowledge, but for saints, if I remember correctly, one of the ways that you become a saint is that you perform miracles after you're dead.
Mhm.
And so in this particular case, Jude is alive.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so in real life, when you have iconographers, they're creating something of a subject that's not currently living and
yeah.
talking to you and able to have an opinion, where in this case, the subject is there. They're having
Mhm.
conversation. How do you play with that tension a little bit more? Because now the subject is not just the holy memory of somebody, it's actually somebody who's living and has their own perspective.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of kind of both ways, I suppose, in the book. So in most cases, for Maeve and for the other iconographers, they're painting based on a description from the elders. So the saints are very, very rarely allowed to meet kind of the general congregation, and they're very much kept separately in a way almost they could be perceived as being dead because they're so far removed from kind of the general public. So that kind of added another layer of this strange relationship between them and the tension because Maeve is so unused to meeting a saint in person that it's very overwhelming to be in the presence of kind of the object of her devotion, especially when that object is behaving so very differently than she thinks he should be. Um, yeah, so I think I kind of wanted to delve into that, like what happens when um something that you view as meant to be perfect and a holy figure is suddenly placed in front of you and it is very much not what you expected and how that then impacts your relationship with what you've been taught to believe.
Well, I think another element to that, we've already mentioned is the fact he's exiled. Like,
Mhm.
why is he exiled, but also still worthy of having an iconographer come over and depict his icon? Like, I don't want to get into spoilers if that's leading into that, but it's an interesting tension where you
Mm.
have somebody who's supposed to be the saint, but they're an exiled saint, but you're still doing iconography over it. So it's an interesting balance that you're playing with there.
Mm. Um, yeah, I think that does form a little bit of kind of the mystery between what Maeve knows and what Jude knows and what how that is clashing and what they're both trying to like figure out. Because at the start of the book, and hopefully this isn't like too big of a spoiler because I think it's like chapter three. But we kind of learned that Jude knows that the Abbey uses Maeve's icons, any icons, as a way of controlling the saints. So there's magic in the icons, and that kind of act of artistry is how they can kind of seize the saint's magic. So Jude knows this. Maeve doesn't know this. She doesn't know that the paintings that she does have a deeper meaning besides forming a connection between, the saint and the petitioner. So that kind of exploration between, um, like I guess the connection between the saint and the icon and with the saint and the abbey themselves is something that is very much like kind of picked at throughout the book and then it becomes a major plot point, especially near the end.
It's obviously not a real world religion.
Mhm.
But when you're dealing with religious themes or religious topics, people naturally might think of their real world religions or something similar. As you're writing this type of story, is there any particular care or attention you place on the actual crafting of the religion, the culture of it, and also what the audience interpretation of that might be?
Yeah. Um, I think it's interesting when you're drawing, because I kind of was raised very, very religiously and then ended up leaving the church as I got older, and a lot of those feelings were very much like funneled into the book. So I think when you're dealing with like personal views of something, a lot of that is coming from my own personal bias as the author, as I think, a lot of people writing books will put their own personal bias into it. And that's kind of you kind of have to accept that not everybody is going to think the same way as you do, is going to view like especially something as personal as religion. And I kind of wanted to like show differing opinions, especially with Jude and Maeve, because they were raised the same way, but then as you near the end of the book and they're coming to terms with everything that has happened, they both settle in very different viewpoints, I think. And I kind of wanted to show that um kind of I don't know, the chafing between like belief, like personal belief and the institution doesn't have to be like you can still believe despite having moved away from the institution. So I didn't want to take a super like religion is bad, this is good. I didn't want it to be black and white at all, because I know it's such a personal thing, and I didn't want to come out of the book having it be something that is like attacking religion or anything like that. That is not in any way the heart of the book. And I think, yeah, with personal topics like that, you do have to be careful about how you're portraying things, and like the stance that various characters take. I think I'm rambling a little bit.
You're you're not. It's I think it's a really interesting topic of discussion because it is complicated, and there's a sense of empathy you need to have for people who are extremely religious for picking up the book, wanting to read the story, but also wondering, like, should they be questioning their faith? Should they be doing this? Should they be doing that?
Mhm.
But also, when you're reading the book, understanding this is a fantasy setting. This isn't,
Yeah.
a real world situation. It is a form of escapism. But at the same time, there is a critique involved with an infrastructure of a religion or this or that. Are people doing things the right way? Are they not? So I think it's an important thing to talk about, and I don't think you're rambling at all.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with what you're saying. I more so wanted to critique religious institutions rather than personal beliefs, to basically sum it up.
Which I think is something that a lot of people grapple with.
Yeah.
You have your own personal faith, and maybe your pastor, your priest, whomever, might be leading your congregation in a way that you don't personally believe in, but you're still struggling with the fact that what you believe, what the institution believes, what the people around you believe might all come into conflict. So I think that's a perfectly rational and normal thing to have a dialogue on. And I think it's very fun to read it in a type of fantasy setting where there's a little bit of separation. So there's a little bit
Yeah.
of safety in that. You're not reading about, this is, historical fiction. This is my
Mhm.
experience. You can have that moment of separation, have that comfort and safety of knowing it's not a one-to-one relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, when you're designing this particular world, earlier in the back of book blurb, it was talking about that he's been exiled to the Moors.
Mhm.
The Moors is a very like iconic setting as it is. Why did you choose this particular area to exile him to?
So a lot of the like sort of historical-ish background is based on I kind of stumbled upon this church in Whitby, which is just on the outskirts of kind of the Yorkshire Moors. And it's set up on a hill. It's a ruin now, but it is like overlooking this whole town. Very like oh, I actually visited there last year. And just the way that this church is just like overlooking this seaside town, and it's banked by these wild moors. It just really, really, um, like I don't know if I had a particular like outside of wanting to kind of pull from the like vibes of this church for lack of a better word. I just loved the atmosphere of this like wild place that can seem very lonely and very desolate kind of from a distance. But also like I kind of wanted, I don't know, I love a cold setting, I love a windy setting. You have the rain and snow and just these like kind of treacherous areas. So I think it was more for like the atmosphere more than anything else. And I love books where the weather plays a character and the setting is a character in itself. So having somewhere that seemed so inhospitable, but really was like the perfect setting to say, like create like a really cozy atmosphere within like Jude's house and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think that's why. And like I've always loved, books like Wuthering Heights, like that sort of very like desolate type setting. That's kind of the vibes I wanted to emulate.
Well, it's interesting that you use the word of character because I do think that setting can absolutely be a character. But what I really liked about what you just said was that there's a almost clash where the exterior world is inhospitable, but the interior world where Jude is cozy,
Yeah.
and showing where you can have this setting have multiple layers. You have certain areas that are one thing and have one type of emotion, certain areas that are another thing have a different type of emotion, and how you feel in those places can change.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, when you're describing it or when you're pulling it together for this particular characterization, does the character of the setting evolve over time depending on how the characters are the actual like person characters are engaging with each other or with their
Hmm.
environment?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, I think at the start, Jude views this place that he has been sent to. He was there alone for 4 years, and then a housekeeper character kind of comes 4 years after that. So he's been there 8 years. He views it very much as like almost a prison. Like he's like, I've been sent here. I hate it. I'm alone. Like I basically can't go anywhere. Just been trapped in here. And over since this like the housekeeper character called Eldon came, he slowly started to warm to it and started to view it as somewhere that could maybe be a home, but definitely not um hasn't softened to it all that much. And then when Maeve gets there, she's very much sees it as representative of Jude himself. So it's very locked doors. She's kept from a lot of places. She finds it very isolating, but at the same time, she finds that she is able to kind of I don't know. She's away from where she was raised, so it is somewhere that she is able to kind of explore on her own, um, like her own volition, essentially. And as the two characters, the walls start to break down with each other, they start to kind of sink more into the home, and it becomes more of a refuge and more of somewhere that they both love and both feel connected to. So I think, yeah, I love the relationship to the house. The home has a name. It's called I always forget how to pronounce it, but I think it's pronounced Anhaga. It's an Old English word and essentially means a solitary being or dwelling for one. And I just really love how the discussion over the homes, kind of the meaning behind it being rewritten throughout the book, is something that is in chapter one and it's in the epilogue. Um, like their relationship to this very solitary, very lonely place as it slowly gets filled with warmth and becomes somewhere that they both just love so much. Yeah, I think I do view the house as its own little character, and I love seeing the relationship with the other characters change throughout the course of the book.
I wonder, and I could be completely off here, but I something that I was thinking of while you were describing this was the fact that both of these individuals are leaving a place that they may have liked much better, coming to this location and then trying to find a way to move forward, find a way to live, find a way to experience life. There's a bit almost of like an immigrant experience in that where you've
Mm.
left your home, you've gone someplace else. As somebody who's also left your home and gone someplace else, did some of that inform like how you were seeing like this is a new environment, this is a new place, this is how I'm going to adapt to this? Was any of that relevant?
Yeah, I actually never thought about it that way, but I definitely agree with that. Because I think like the themes around like loneliness and having to like kind of create your community are definitely like part of what I've experienced. Like I've been living over here for 10 years, but um especially like finishing university and kind of leaving a community that is like kind of set up for you. It's easier to make friends and moving into adulthood where everything has to be intentional. Um, yeah, I would definitely say that a lot of that experience transcribed into the book. And I had not thought of that before, and I really enjoy that.
No, I have a somewhat similar background in the sense that I moved from the United States and Canada to France.
Mm,
And so while you're describing it, I was like, I feel like I kind of relate to some of that, where I was like,
yeah.
I've moved to a place where you're trying to figure out your place. You're not sure where it is. You're trying to, deal with the weather that's very different, deal with the
Mhm.
landscape that's very different, and finding that place and community. And so it felt familiar. And so I just figured I'd ask.
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah.
Well, I think while you're describing your book, there's a lot of like heavy emotions involved with it.
Mhm.
There's just in the little that we've talked about, there's a bit of anger of being exiled someplace. There's a bit of
Yeah.
frustration. There's a bit of uncertainty, confusion. When you're balancing all of these different emotions, how do you ensure that the reader, for instance, doesn't get bogged down with this is too many emotions at once? How do you create a nice subtle flow so they can continue to go through with the book without feeling overwhelmed?
Mm. That's actually something that we worked a lot on in like in developmental edits, was making sure that the characters' motivations and where they are from point A to point B are super clear. Because I'm very much like a character-driven writer, and I definitely tend to get bogged down with like the interiority of the character and like you know yourself. You just feel like you know your character so well, and it's so obvious to you what they're thinking and feeling, but that is not always the case when somebody else is reading it. So a lot of edits were around like streamlining these wants and these motivations so that it's clear to the reader the journey from A to B. And I think especially with Maeve, because Jude's desires, I think, are a lot more clear from the off. Like he wants to be less lonely. He wants to feel a sense of purpose and that sort of thing. Whereas Maeve is a little bit different because she very much was content in the Abbey. She was content at her home. Um, and yeah, so a lot of edits was making sure that her wants were streamlined. But I think emotionally wise, um, like with a good romance, I do love a good slow burn emotional journey. So making sure that these big feelings that these characters were going through were more of like a slow unwrapping than just kind of like dealing with one thing after another really quickly and really like big emotions. So making sure everything was in like little tiny turns of the wheel, so to speak. So that when you look back, you're like, this journey has actually been quite substantial, but it's happened in really little increments that it feels more, I guess, more natural to the characters and to kind of the pace of the storytelling.
When you're writing a slow burn, you've already talked about like how you want to incrementally pull it together. What do you think is important for the start of the slow burn so that the audience knows isn't just a friendship that's happening, but also the progression of it. It's like, how do you balance that pace?
Mhm. Um, Yeah, I think with a good slow burn, any time that I felt tempted to kind of move the relationship on quicker, just pushing that back like 4 or 5 chapters and making it so maybe the characters want to get closer than they actually are, or they're wanting to kind of progress the relationship, but something is stopping them. But then, because it's dual POV, you're getting both characters' kind of thoughts on the other one, really having them like get hung up in their own minds about what they want with the other character or what they won't let themselves have. Um, and then just pushing back the actual action. So say they're, wanting to even small things like spending more time together, but or starting to, in the book there's a lot of clashing between what Jude knows and what Maeve knows and what Maeve doesn't want to know. So him wanting to tell her things and her almost not letting him be honest because she doesn't want to hear it. It's going to wreck her worldview. So that kind of like emotional tension as well as like the physical side of things, I think is what makes a good slow burn is keeping that like that mystery between them and that tension. Because if you break that tension too early, at least for me, I'm reading a book, I'm like, well, I'm not like super invested anymore because it's happened like already. What's next? Yeah, so just keeping that kind of like chafing between them, I suppose, until it feels like the right time.
When you do decide it's the right time, when as an author do you feel like this is the moment? Like what is it doesn't have to necessarily be for this book if you don't want to do spoilers, but like what for you personally is that moment where you're like, you know what, this all of this has led up to this point and now I know this is what this will be the most rewarding moment.
Um, that is a good question. I think it does very much depend on the character and on the setting. Um, like I'm a big outliner. I love to have a big outline and I'm like, okay, well, this is going to happen in this chapter and whatnot. But always when I come down to it, it's like, oh, the characters are they're saying it's not time yet. Like this isn't the right time for things to happen. So I think you do kind of have to let the characters tell you when it's going to be the right time for things. And you can definitely kind of set things up plot wise to lead to certain moments. Like there's uh without trying to be too spoilery, there's a certain trope that is put into play kind of, I would say 60% of the way through the book that is very much set up that you think it's going to be a big romantic moment between the characters, but then some it's kind of diverted. So I think like those sort of things are a good way to kind of build tension as well as kind of taking the reader expectation and delaying it further or flipping it on its head that sort of thing, so that when you actually get to like the big moment and it feels right, especially with the like emotional development of the character, that it feels like you've earned it.
You said earlier that you're a big outliner. When I assume that means that you're a plotter, not a pantser.
Yes, I love a plot.
But you also said that sometimes your characters just tell you, no, that's not the right time. Um, I find that that's very normal, where
Mhm.
while you're writing the character, you become more and more informed of the character voice, the character journey. But when do you, or do you, go with what the character wants? Do you push back? Do you make other edits to make sure that your original vision holds true? When, as a writer, do you make those decisions?
I think a lot of like major changes happen in edits for me. So a lot of the times I will try to follow my outline as strictly as I can on the first draft and on like self-editing, but then a lot of like following what the characters want, I say would happen in edits because I know the characters better. And then you're getting outside point of views and that sort of thing, which are definitely helpful, especially with, agents, editors, whatnot. Yeah, so I think a lot of the kind of following the heart of the book more so than like what I've thought the book should be happens more so in edits than it does in first draft, which I don't know if that's similar to a lot of writers.
I think
I'm
it
very
changes
strict with
writer to
myself.
writer. Everyone's
Yeah,
got their
yeah.
own system.
Like I think with drafting, I need to be very strict with myself. Otherwise, if I feel that the plot is going somewhere that I don't know where it's going, then I get very like panicked about it. And I'm like, I don't have my roadmap. I don't know where this is going. But once you have a draft down, you have your plot beats, you have a beginning, you have an end, and then you can kind of change the path along the way that it feels easier to me and more achievable.
So are you the type of writer who will just write start to finish, go straight through, and then you go back afterwards?
Yeah, so it's anytime I talk about my writing process, it just sounds like the most boring thing in the world because I'll just sit and I'll write one chapter a day, 5 days a week until the book is done. Like it's very, I love a regimented schedule. Um, very type A, I would say. But
But if it
yeah,
works for you, it
like
works for you.
it does. Like I've chatted to friends and they're like, "Oh, I've just written a chapter that's like the final scene of the book and they're on like chapter 4." I'm like, "Oh God, I could not do that. I'd be so stressed." I'm like, but whatever works, I love hearing about different people's ways of writing.
I think for me, I toe the line between plotting and pantsing.
Mhm.
I find that if I write a detailed outline to begin with, I get super stressed out, and I also feel like, oh, book's done. I mean, it's 1,000
Like
words, but
that's
it's done. It's over. I know what's gonna happen. We're good. And then I don't really feel the motivation to like keep writing. And
yeah.
so I tend to just be like, sit down, just like, I have an idea, I'm gonna go. And I usually know where I'm going to go. I have the whole thing in my head, but it's just a matter of doing it.
Mm.
Um, but then throughout, I was like, all right, well, I need to plan this out a little bit. Maybe I'll think about this a little bit. I think it's more of I don't write it down. I just really think about it for a very long time. So I know it all and then I
Yeah.
can write it. But as soon as like I write the outline, now it's like I'm good. The book is done. I don't need it
It's like all the
anymore.
creative energy has already been like output, so you're like, meh.
Yeah, which is
That's fair.
awful, especially because like when you have to like give outlines to your agent, to your editor to be like, this is the next idea. And they're like, give us an outline. It's like, just trust me. It'll be fine. Promise.
Yeah, it is funny. I love hearing about different people's creative processes because it's always so different.
Yeah. Um, you said that you did a lot of work in dev edits. Was that with another person or were you doing edits prior to going to query, prior to moving forward with your process?
Most of the edits were in like after the book is sold for sure. So I think I did maybe two or three passes prior to querying, and then I think we did two rounds with my first agent before we went on sub. And then, oh my word, I think honestly, two-thirds of the book were rewritten in dev edits with the publisher, which was wild looking back. Because I'm like, it's really interesting because I think so much of like the like emotions and the heart of the book didn't change at all, but so much of the plot did. Because when the book sold, and I do think still elements of it remain, it was very much a very quiet book. It was very slow paced and took a while to kind of ramp up to things. But now it is definitely pacier, which like I really learned a lot in that process about writing like a fast-paced book because that has never been my forte. Like I love a really meandering story and something that takes a while to kind of sink into, but I don't think everybody loves books like that. So I think it's for the best.
Well, you bring up a really interesting point if we don't mind staying here for a moment, which is that the book that you sell, the book that gets picked up,
Mhm.
change quite a bit between your original draft and the final draft. As an author, when you're in that position, you're being given all these changes, or you're given these suggestions, or told that you need to get rid of two-thirds of your book or change two-thirds of your book. Um, there is an emotional side where it's like, well, you bought the book that I gave you. Why are we changing
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
But there's also the side of this person is in publishing. Should I be listening to them? Should I make these choices? Why did you feel comfortable making the choices that were presented to you? And what was your feelings about addressing those changes and moving forward?
Yeah, I think I was in the very lucky position because the book sold at auction, so I had a few different options of like editorial vision was a big thing for me when having editor calls. So with so the book sold first to Harper Voyager and pretty much all the dev edits were done with them because it sold in the US like a year after. Um, so a lot of the dev edits were with my editor, and she's since left Harper, but Rachel. And from the off, she was like, I want to make this book so much angstier. I want to make it so much more like slow burn. I want to bring out like these elements and these elements. And it just like clicked with me. So I think the main thing going into dev edits, and I knew that there was going to be some substantial edits, was because I really trusted her vision. Um, so I was kind of happy to make the changes because it was so clear how much she understood the book and like the heart behind it and the characters that a lot of these like introducing new plot elements, new characters, new all sorts of things. I just really trusted her that it was going to make it better. And I think if I didn't have that trust with her vision and what she thinks would have made the book better, that I would have kind of dug the heels in a little bit. Um, yeah, so I think with any sort of like author editor relationship, whether or not, that's trad pub or you're going indie and you've hired somebody to help do your edits, that it's about trusting your editor that they really get the book and want to make it shine.
I think there's a lot of writers who their book is their baby.
Mhm.
And the idea of changing anything in their book is just absolutely repugnant. They can't do it because it's like, no,
Yeah.
this is my vision exactly how it is. And that's completely valid and understandable. And I'm not saying that that's incorrect. No, I think a lot of people really struggle with knowing when to say, okay, maybe I can change something, or knowing when to actually push back and say, no, I can't change this.
Yeah.
When you say that you trusted your editor's vision, why did you trust that vision? Like, what was it about how she presented it to you that made you go, you know what, I think this is a good idea?
I think just the way that she talked about the book from the off, like she really understood like the two characters out of them. Like I would relate a lot more to Jude. Like I love them both equally, of course. But he's truly my baby, and I just really I'm very protective about him, and the way that I just feel like she got him as a character right off the bat, and I think if somebody reads the book and they come to me with like really insightful stuff to say about Jude or they really like him, I'm like, okay. So I just felt like she got the book based on her like understanding and love for this character and kind of the like painful journey that she wanted to put him on. And yeah, so it's just like I don't know, even like she sent when they put in their offer, like put sent a letter in kind of talking about changes she wanted to make to the book and like her understanding about it. And that really like solidified it for me that that was like the vision that I wanted to go for it. Just yeah, just because I think it's got me excited about it and excited to make the changes.
Were there any suggestions that you did push back on or say, no, absolutely not, I'm not going to make this change?
Yeah, it's kind of a small change, but I was really, really passionate about it. So there's one scene where Maeve gets her period and has like a really tough time with it and a lot of pain, and Jude is kind of there to um like offer, you know, help, sympathy, whatnot, and is really caring towards her towards it. Like, and it's almost forms like a little pivotal change in their relationship, like emotionally, that he's there for her. And they wanted to make it so she was just had like an injury or something. And I really wanted to keep it that she was really suffering with a painful period. Because I know me, a lot of, you know, people who have periods really struggle with that sort of thing. And I didn't want to like take that away. I wanted that in there because I don't know if I haven't read very many fantasy books that's like had that kind of representation in it. So that's something I was really like, no, I'm passionate about keeping this in here. I really want this to be something that she's going through. Like I know that's like quite a small thing in the grand scheme of the plot. Like it's not really a plot element, so to speak, but it was something that I really wanted to keep in there.
No, I think it's important. Like, even if it's a small thing, if it's something that like is meaningful to you or something that you think is important for readers to have, yeah, you absolutely should say something.
Mm.
For writers who might be in a similar situation where they want to push back, what was the experience of pushing back and what was the reaction on the other side? Like, were you nervous? Were you uncomfortable?
Mm.
Did you feel supported in making that choice? How did that process actually go?
Yeah, I think with anything in publishing, like I and I'm such a people pleaser as well that any like sort of pushback, I just feel like I'm the worst person in the world.
Well, yeah,
So
because like you don't want to be the squeaky wheel. You want to be the
no,
one that's like making everybody happy, and then now you have
yeah,
something.
like you just want them to like you at all times.
Exactly.
Uh, yeah, I think it was very much like a little, I think I sent it in like a little sandwich being like, I love everything. Can we keep this? I love everything. You know, and I think because it was like a small plot change that it wasn't like a big deal or anything like that, like I definitely made it out to be like I was laying out this like horrible thing I wanted to keep, but it was such a small a small factor. But yeah, it's definitely nerve-wracking because you definitely feel like that like the dynamic between author, especially debut author and publisher can be a really frightening one to kind of feel into. But yeah, like I think having also an agent that you're really like comfortable with and that like you know really has your back is super helpful. And I was still with my first agent at the time, Alice. And yeah, she was very encouraging, being like, no, you'll like it'll be fine, like has my back, all that sort of stuff. So I think knowing that you're supported when asking for changes, even things down the line, like there was chat about changing the title, and I really didn't want to change the title. So that was something I literally sent like an essay of like, please let me keep my title. Um, yeah, so it is scary, but it'll be okay.
If you feel comfortable talking about it, you mentioned you had a first agent originally, and then you transitioned to someone else. What was
Mhm.
that process like, and why did you transfer to a different agent?
Yeah, it was pretty sudden. So my agent Alice ended up leaving the industry as a whole, which really was a hard time because I absolutely loved her. Like we're still good friends now. Like she was so, so wonderful. I was her first client, first deal, and just had such a great relationship with her. So it was definitely like a shock when, she left and I was kind of trying to find something new as quickly as possible. Um, but it honestly wasn't all that bad. And I know like the experience querying with a book deal as opposed to like going in cold was wildly, wildly different. Like I only ended up querying 5 agents. And I knew like I wanted a UK based agent. I wanted somebody who was really proven themselves to sell sell books. Uh yeah, and then like we're both with Maddie. She's absolutely wonderful and just felt so comfortable right off the bat and just knew it was gonna be a good fit. But yeah, it happened really quick. It happened like over Christmas.
Oh.
So it was kind of I think I had like 6 weeks in between sending the first query and like signing with Maddie just with taking a few weeks off for the holidays and whatnot. But yeah.
When you're in that type of situation, just for people who are curious, when you did contact your 5 agents, did you write in your query letter, I've already got a deal, I've already got this is the situation, and what physically did you do in order to that was different from when you're querying cold?
Yeah. Um I didn't really send like a query letter per se because I didn't really have anything new to send with it. So I kind of sent an email being like, here's the situation, here's who I'm represented by. Um and I think I attached like the bookseller article about the books, like the book deal and all that, and was like, I just kind of need somebody as soon as possible to like get this sorted. And then I put like a few paragraphs over some ideas that I'd kind of started to work on, that sort of thing. So I didn't really have like first 10 pages of something to send, but in the email I was like, look, I can send you Sacred Space. I can send you at the time I had just finished the first draft of the second book of my contract. So I was like, I can send you that if you want to read it. Basically, it was a little bit unhinged to be honest, and it was not anything like my like extremely carefully crafted first query letter that I'm like so terrified to send out. It was kind of like, hey, like please.
Is
But
there any advice that you'd give to other authors who might be in similar situations and how to handle that particular situation?
um I would say I think now like having been agented and then requerying, like I'm less afraid of agents. Like, when it's also new and you're like super, super formal and that sort of thing. So I think I would just recommend people who are requerying to kind of approach agents more like people, I guess, than just like an agent. I don't know if that makes sense. Because so much of what like from my relationship with Alice is I really wanted an agent who was going to be really personable, really friendly, and I didn't really want that I didn't want to be afraid of my agent. So if somebody was going to reject me because I had like been too like friendly or informal or something like that, wouldn't have been an agent that I wanted to sign with in the first place. And then also for people who are requerying, just be super selective over who you query. Because at that point, having been agented, you kind of know, I really like this about my last agent. I didn't like this. I want somebody who is, um, XYZ and kind of using that to form your parameters when you're querying. Also talking to like past clients, um, super, super helpful. Like all of the offers I got, I was definitely in other clients' inboxes being like, tell me everything. Um, yeah.
Before we wrap up today, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to have the last word. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you would like to mention or go into more detail?
Oh goodness. I don't think so. I think we've pretty much covered everything. But
Okay.
I'm really excited for this to come out. I'm excited for, yeah, it'll be good. The book and everything. And yeah, it's a scary time, as you know. I think I've talked
It,
a lot about being frightened on this call. I'm not that scared.
You know, I think the fear is normal.
Yeah.
We're afraid of things that we haven't yet experienced. And I mean, you even talked about that you were a lot less scared the second time you went to an agent. Hopefully, the second time you get a book, you'll be a lot less scared with that too. And then just the fear goes down as it all becomes routine.
Mm.
That's the hope.
Yeah, definitely.
That's it for this week's episode of Lindsey Byrd in Writing is Hard. Kaylee Reed's book, The Sacred Space Between, is out on the 20th of November, 2025. Check the description to find out more about her and where to find her book. If you enjoyed this content, please do like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to make more. Bye for now.